If you've been around my channel for any amount of time, you've either seen or heard me talk about Andy Bruce. She's my ministry partner and really close friend. But today's going to be just a little bit different. She's actually interviewing me for her podcast, which is called Women Speaking Truth. Neither one of us are really looking at the camera. I just propped up my camera in hopes of maybe being able to use it for YouTube. This may be a good one just to put your headphones in and listen to it like you would listen to a podcast. If you're not subscribed to Andy's podcast, I highly recommend you add her to your list. Her podcast, Women Speaking Truth, is found anywhere that you listen to a podcast. She's got really, really good stuff over there. Enough of my blabbering. Take it away, Andy.
So friends, today I've got my really good friend. Wait, which do you think goes first, friend or ministry partner?
When we've done ministry partner first, that's gone bad. So let's do friend first.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, this is my super good friend and secondly, ministry partner, Melissa Dunn. Melissa,
Hey friends.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I think I would assume many people know you, but if there's a few stragglers who aren't connected to your YouTube channel, by the way, friends, you've heard me address it, I think a couple times on here. I would love for you. Melissa is a Bible teacher and just a teacher. Like her bone marrow screams it out. Go check out her YouTube channel if you want to. What do you do on the YouTube channel?
All you have to do in search is just search Melissa Sue Dunn and I'll pop up.
Melissa Sue Dunn.
Melissa Sue. We had to distinguish. There's other Melissa Dunns on YouTube, so bring it in the middle name.
Okay, Melissa. So if somebody doesn't know you yet, what do you think they need to know?
I'm an introvert. I'm not good on the spot like this.
Yes, and yes.
I'm a thinker, maybe an overthinker. I don't know. What else am I?
Thank you. I'm really glad you asked. Melissa is...
I like other people to talk for me.
She does. She is a worker. Like what's an animal that really, really works a lot? Like a elephant?
Ant?
An ant.
Please do not call me an elephant, although I do feel a kinship with him.
Shut up. Okay. The second is, this is really important for friends to know. So Melissa and I have a very sisterly relationship. You know how when you see a level of intimacy, a level of talking back to one another.
Yeah, but nobody better talk about you in front of me. Or
Agreed.
that will,
it doesn't go
so
well.
It's the same thing like as sisters. Like I can say it. You may not say it. I can joke with her. You may not joke with her.
That's right. And so we've heard this over the years. It's like you guys are married.
Or have your own language.
Yes,
I've heard people say.
It really bothers me. Please don't say it's like we're married. It really is not like that whatsoever. But because we do speak, we've done ministry together for how long?
Over a decade, almost. Over 12 years.
And it's not just doing ministry. It's like today, you want to 5 hours?
5 hours of intense, either recordings and then meetings.
So, Melissa, is this too on the spot? Unpack what ministry for us has looked like, whatever that means to you.
You start, and then I can fill in the blanks.
Well, for me, it goes all the way back to the beginning in Genesis 1.
Why? Always.
Just kidding. No, I remember the first night I met you. It was when I did this 10-minute blip at our local church, and you were doing women's ministry and looking for somebody to shoulder the burden or the weight of teaching the Bible to other women. I think about that and I feel like God knew under any other circumstances, a hobby, not going to happen. Relationships, not going to happen. A friendship, we would never have recognized our deep passion and mission except for in that environment. It jump-started our relationship because it was all about women and the Bible and using our voice in a way that I think you feel called to and I feel called to. So for me, that has done over the years, writing Bible studies, even just talks, leading a ministry together, sitting down with women who are hurting, sitting down with women who are leading along or with us.
Doing some conferences, larger sort of gatherings, teaching at those together.
Writing, YouTubing, face-to-face, for a long time.
Yeah.
So when people say, it's like you guys have your own language, that's because of the thousands of hours, not just of working together, but even more so for me, this would be my perspective of praying together.
Yeah.
Like that's just not true. I don't think in any other relationship.
How many hours of prayer over the last 12 years have we prayed?
Oh boy, I can't even begin to fathom. So welcome to the podcast, Melissa. Aren't you happy?
I am happy to be here.
Good. Okay, so friends, we're talking about using our voice. So I know for me, the first thought that comes to mind is like a singer who begins to recognize, oh, I have a voice. Like, I think everybody sings, right? Even if you don't even mean to. Like, you're not a big singer at all. Do you ever catch yourself singing or humming? Never. Not on your worst day. But I think for most people, we sing even if we don't think we're good singers. And I remember hearing my best friend who she discovered that she could sing when she was about 19 years old.
That late?
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Yeah.
I didn't know that.
She would hum and sing, but just like the rest of us. And then she was like, oh, I think something happened. And I think the same is true, because here's the thing, Melissa, she used her voice as a 1-day-old baby. We all have had a voice like exiting the womb. That's how they knew we were here when we were delivered, is because there was a loud noise. We used words, we had sentences, we engaged and communicated with people. But like Stacy going, oh my gosh, I'm 19 years old, which is a little late for a singer, maybe. I think I can sing. I think I can do something.
But wait, can I say, I asked Andy to write down an outline for us. It's mostly question mark.
Exhibit A, Andy's outline for this podcast. You'll notice at the top, there's an intro story. And curiously enough, there is a second intro story, an intro for the intro. Then we've got what's most helpful, 2 question marks follow, and then we have a wrap up. Even though I'm not prepped, she tends to pull things out of me I did not know were there.
So this is very unprepped.
And I feel great with the question. I'm like, because I know that means a question, and that means a question, and then we wrap up.
So all that to say, we have not like pre-discussed this or anything. But I have a question for you then, though. Is everybody has a voice, but not everybody can sing. Not everybody's good at singing. So are we comparing a voice to someone who's good at articulating their voice?
That's
and
a
if
good
not,
question.
then what does that mean?
Okay, so then to answer this, let's talk about this question. I think without a doubt, God's given you not just your vocal cords, like the actual noise that comes out of your mouth. I'm not referring to that. So let's call that our physical voice. I don't mean that. I mean the way that God has wired you, and which is different from how God's wired me, which is different than how God's wired you guys. And it's meant to be different, where it's a deposit of the Spirit of God that when we're like, God, I want to be used by you. I want to bring you to other people. That's through my interaction, my communication to another person. And sometimes women don't discover that voice. I don't know why. It'd be an interesting discussion. But I think for many of our friends, they're like, yes, I know that God has used me when when there's another person on the other side of the conversation. And I'm like, oh, that wasn't from me. That was from God. Or we get a text or a follow-up conversation, or we hear through the grapevine. That conversation meant so much to me.
So can we go back to maybe like go back and sort of clarify also what we mean by voice again? And this is because I'm trying to wrap my own brain around it.
Yep.
So our voice implies, when you say voice, and it's not the literal noise coming out of my mouth from my vocal cords, you're talking about the substance behind my words.
Yes, good job,
which
Melissa.
is a reflection of how I think and how I feel.
Yeah.
My perception of the world around me, and being able to express that.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I think when I use my voice in a way that God uses it, I don't try to do it. I'm not like, I'm going to go and minister to my friend.
And get ready, here's my voice.
Right.
I'm going to use my voice.
Yeah, I'm going to need
like
your
that.
attention because here it comes. Everybody sit down. It's just, in fact, it's quite the opposite of I'm just having a conversation, but I'm willing to say what I feel like sometimes God just sort of puts in my mouth or puts on my mind or puts on my heart, and then he uses that.
So can I tell you the very first time? Well, let me back up before the first time that a teacher brought this out of like, Melissa, we need to hear your voice more. But let's back up before that. The house that I grew up in this is not like a woe is me or blah, blah, but for context on voice, I probably was told to shut up and that I was a stupid idiot. I mean, maybe 3 or 4 times a day. This was constant. Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up, sit down, shut up. And I learned to be very small and quiet is how I just lived in my house to be able to incur less of the wrath. Which then, what does that do with a voice? It completely stifles it.
Yep.
Completely stifles it. And so I must have been in 8th or ninth grade, and it was Mrs. Zapula. She was mostly blind. She was our favorite teacher. She was wonderful. And we were having a discussion, and it was based off of like literature. And I remember realizing that the class was in my opinion, was interpreting the poem wrong. And
it started
really,
then, huh?
it really bugged me that they weren't seeing what I thought was the case, which actually I thought the poem was about rape. And
Weird.
And nobody else was saying it. And I'm like, so I raised my hand and I'm like, I think you're all wrong. And here's why. Here's why I think it's actually about rape and not what you're saying. And I could see on Mrs. Zapula's face, like, bingo, you got it. And afterwards, she came up to my desk and she like put her hand on my desk. I remember looking at it and her saying, Melissa, when you speak, people listen. You need to speak more. And I remember thinking, what a weird, nobody is listening to me or wants to listen to me. Why would I ever do that? There was zero desire to use my voice. Zero, none.
You're bringing up a really good point, and that is because imagine for most of the rest of the world in that scenario being told, shut up, like even if it wasn't said, it was certainly implied. We kind of just wish you weren't here, or just don't say anything because it makes life for the rest of us better. I know maybe that's not everybody's background or story, but it's a really, I wonder, important piece of thinking now, present day. Where is my voice? Am I willing? Does God use me? Because I think that is how he's wired all of us, is to be used by God in a communicable expression toward other people. And I think that's why people are listening or watching this, is because we all want this, period. That's why our friends are enjoying even this conversation. It's like, I want to know Jesus and I want others to do the same. Do you think then, like, can you see how imperative it might be for most of us, even if it's just for a blip, for 90 seconds, to wonder, so when I was little, what were the circumstances of my voice and how might that impact me?
Yeah, was I able to use it or was I not able to use it? And what does that look like? How does that inform who I am at this moment?
Yeah.
Because in 8th grade or ninth grade, whatever grade that was, there was not enough, you couldn't have paid me enough to risk using my voice. There wasn't enough at stake. I can tell you when the next time that I can recall.
So go back to that. You said in 8th or ninth grade, you just went with the flow?
Oh, no. I did not use my voice. I remember raising my hand only because I thought they were so wrong, is the only, where I'm like, and this is important and you're seeing this wrong. That was my motivation, but it was 1 in 1,000. I typically would not do that because it did not matter enough to me. It did not seem worth the risk to be ridiculed or because I felt so stupid. Like I was just dumb. Or that's actually not true. Because I actually did think I was intelligent because I got good grades. But I thought my voice was dumb. That for sure. My perspective was dumb. Who I am, it's just not worth anything. What I see is not worth anything.
So can we pause there? I think your teacher saw something, and maybe some around you would say her voice is X or Y or Z. You know what I mean? But you had a unique perspective that can cripple us if we buy into it and never, I don't know, throw that out of like, well, let's see what happens. So you would say you thought your voice was dumb.
Dumb, not worth listening to. My thoughts or opinions didn't add anything. And when I did use my voice, like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, I would be bombarded, and I do mean bombarded, with thoughts that would just make me want to clench my ears. You're stupid, shut up, shut up. It was not worth. That was not worth using my voice. I did not want the consequences of hearing all that stuff about myself. So it was just easier to stay quiet.
I think because many of our friends see you for today. You know what I mean? A loud voice. A very loud voice and an intelligent voice, an insightful perspective, worth listening to. Like, that's crazy, is that it's really easy to assume Melissa's voice just kind of comes natural.
So can we back up, not even 20 years ago, And I was not offended by it at all. When we started coming to Blue Ridge, there was this leadership, like the whole church, anybody that was in leadership was invited to this, like, I don't even know if you were there yet.
A Saturday afternoon where it's
No,
okay.
It was like a 2-day at this camp
Uh-huh.
thing. And Jared and I were both serving in children's ministry. They did not ask me. And I knew why they didn't ask me. Nobody saw anything in me. Nobody heard or saw anything. I was not offended. I'm like, good, I don't want to go anyway with these people. But there was no voice.
That's not that long ago.
And it would have been about maybe 18 years ago. So give that a year. So nobody's investing me. They're all investing in Jared for his leadership. None of the leaders are like even talking to me. I didn't.
You had no awareness too?
None. I didn't want them to be.
But even of your own possibility?
No.
Isn't that encouraging? Because what it would look like is Melissa's always been. That's the assumption. That's really easy to make.
Yeah. People would come up to Jared and be like, is your wife okay? Like, is she okay? Like, can we pray for her? Because I looked like not a happy person because I wasn't.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until about a year after that, I remember the very first time it ever occurred to me, or I ever saw it. And we were at Willow Creek, which is a church up north, at a children's ministry conference. And I definitely remember the two ladies that were sitting in a table. It was like at lunchtime. And there might have been other people at the table too, but I started sharing what God was teaching me, and it was about God, because I was starting to feel this something about God churning in me in a way that I could not tamp it down, even though it was painful to speak about because I felt like so insecure. It's terrible.
Yeah.
The insecurity I felt. But I just went for it at the table to really share what I thought. And I saw them, it was Kim and Heidi. They were eating and they put their sandwich down and leaned in to actually listen to me. And I thought, what is happening? Like, they are really listening. Do I actually have something to say?
I'm really sharing.
Like, yeah. And it feels like it matters. From? Yeah.
Wow.
That was the very beginning, maybe 18 years ago.
So talk about the next couple moments where you're like, oh, that was another step forward that brought me from a silent, isolated, hurt and angry woman who despised her own voice. I know you will have to say that. To then that happened. Like,
it was so slow and gradual. Like, the whole process was so slow and gradual. But I started to realize in that same time frame, I think others in leadership started to see something. Maybe like, maybe she's got some sort of voice. So they put me in a tiny circle of college students that were serving in children's ministry. So it was
you
the
were
adults.
Serving in kids.
I was leading a little girl's second grade small group.
Wow,
Poor children. I know, poor children. I tried my best. But so they put me in a prayer circle. There was maybe 4 or 5 college students, and you didn't have to. Well, I guess you did kind of have to. It was expected that I would lead that circle in prayer, and typically that meant like 3 or 4 minutes of saying something to the group, and then we would listen to a song and pray. I remember we lived in this like tiny basement. Adeline was probably 2 years old, and going to sleep thinking, I'm losing my mind. Like, I really think I might be going crazy, because all I can think about is these people, that small little circle, and being with them, sharing with them, and actually feeling something, because I was not somebody who felt a whole lot, and feeling like my heart pounding and realizing the connection between God and these people and what they're doing and the impact that could happen. And I thought, I'm losing my mind. Like, am I going crazy?
Because it matters?
Because it matters. And because I feel prompted to actually really give my all to speak. Like, I really think these 2 or 3 moments or minutes are really important. And I think maybe I do have something to say that God would use. Maybe. Now, I would leave those 2 or 3 minutes totally crushed and bombarded with the after effect. But
what?
Stupid idiot, shut your mouth. You're so stupid. They think you're stupid. They know you're stupid. Why did you even say that? Stop talking. Stop talking. How embarrassing
for everybody.
Yes, they're embarrassed of you, for you. What you're saying is wrong. You're disappointing God. You're just like constant bombardment. But I did actually start to see their eyes would maybe light up a bit, or connections would start to be made. And that started to balance the misery that I would experience on the backside of it to say, but no, actually, I think this might be doing something.
So here you are struggling as a human, but growing immensely. I don't know if I've ever asked you this question, but I know that we've alluded to it a lot. I'm assuming that what it feels like these days, like a feeling or a thought that leads to a feeling or vice versa of when you teach the Bible or getting content now, particularly delivering it, using your voice to speak it to somebody, is probably similar to that feeling of like a satisfaction that maybe when you saw those eyes brighten a little bit. What does that feel like for you?
Wait, what? Eyes brightening?
These days when you're teaching the Bible.
One, I do not have that bombardment typically of you're an idiot, shut your mouth, close your mouth, don't talk. I don't have that bombardment after, or I guess I should say nearly to the cacophony that would be. That's number one. Number two, what exactly are you asking?
What does it feel like when you use your voice in a way that you feel like God's wired you to?
It feels like being at home. It feels like comfortable and natural and right.
Do you feel like, so I would assume other people would say, I feel such joy and pleasure.
No, I don't feel that. I don't feel joy and pleasure.
So what keeps you going? Because I know how hard you work. It's not natural.
Oh,
it's not.
To get my thoughts from here out of my mouth? That is not natural.
I remember you would say, back when we first were doing ministry, that generally, and I thought you were exaggerating, but now I'm like, no, I bet you was dead on, that approximately for every 1 minute of teaching
it's 1 hour of prep.
It was 1 hour of prep.
And I'm not even counting like thought prep. I mean literal work prep.
Meaning this, I think it's very easy to see somebody with a strong voice and assume it's easy. It's just natural. I could never do whatever because like that stuff just comes very naturally to her.
Yeah.
And it's obviously the gift of God is deposited naturally by his spirit, but that does not mean it's like fluttery and easy.
It's a lot of hard work. And I'm not sure why. I think I can think rather complicated in like a spider web. And it's what I feel like my job is. And by job, I don't mean like a job where I'm paid, but I mean like my calling from God is to take the complication and try to make it simple. And that is where my work is, going from complicated to simple to articulate it. And it doesn't bring joy and peace and all of that, but it brings a rightness or a satisfaction. To me would be a better word than joy. Feels like effervescent and it's not that, but it's more like solid, right? This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. This is a tough one. I feel like this would be a hard question. If you had to describe the voice that God's given you.
Oh, that's not hard.
Really? What?
So I heard John Piper, who has just been like a mentor to me from afar.
Remember the time you slipped him a letter?
I do.
And the security guard was like, where's the bomb sniffing dogs?
I do remember that.
Oh, that's awesome.
He was talking about spiritual gifts and he's like, his take is, and actually I think he's probably correct, not to get on a tangent, but that all of the spiritual gifts listed in the Bible are not exhaustive. That would be his take. And so he said, he was listing off these like random spiritual gifts that aren't listed. And he said, maybe you have the spiritual gift of warning. And I'm like, is that a spiritual gift? Because if it is, I think I have it. And
you do. I would say we've seen this.
Yeah. So I think my voice is probably on one end, maybe warning and woes.
Yes.
And on the other end, what I hope, I'm not sure that it is, but what I hope it would be is the beauty and wonder of who God is. I hope it's that.
Yeah.
And then on the other side is warning and woe. For us to not see him or give everything to him, there's a warning and woe.
So what would you say to people who are probably most of our friends? Well, I'm curious, do you think most of your friends on YouTube and those who listen to the podcast, I would assume that they've got some semblance of like, I think here's how God uses me, or I know that he does, whether it's few and far between or sort of comfortable with that idea.
I have no idea. I would love to know. On podcast, I'm not sure. How could somebody on the podcast get a hold of you if they wanted to?
I have no idea.
Great. Maybe if you find her on Instagram, do you ever check your messages?
I do now.
Okay,
Like for
find
3
her on
weeks
Instagram.
in a
It's
row.
Andy and Andy Bruce.
I don't know.
Great. For YouTube, you can drop in the comments below because we're recording this for YouTube as well. But do you? I actually have no idea. If I had to guess, I would say, and this is a guess based off of just trying to go with like the algorithm of 20 years in women's ministry. No, excuse me, 15 years of women's ministry. 50% probably have no idea that they have a voice still. Grown women.
Yeah.
I have a couple in my mind that I'm watching them in our group at Bible Lab and thinking they have no idea the voice they have.
So what's the woe to that?
I'm not sure it would be a woe. I think it would be the opposite of a woe, but the wonder of the voice that has been placed in each one of us. That does not mean that you have the gift of teaching or the gift of prophecy or the gift of, leadership. Maybe you have the gift of mercy, like my friend Sarah Gosnell does, and her voice is one that sees those who nobody else is seeing, and she leverages her voice to get you to be like,
To care.
that never even crossed my mind. Thank you, Sarah. Another example. What would be another example that's not like teacher from the stage?
How about administrative? Like I remember
Oh my gosh, yes.
Marilee.
Bailey Brown.
Yes.
That will bring like sharp clarity into
Yes.
a chaotic Katie, into a chaotic
Right.
sort of, Andy and I function, I think, like creatives would
Yeah.
function,
It's
which is
messy.
messy and a disaster. And to have them use their voice to be like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Why'd you do this? Or well, what about
Asking
that?
really hard questions.
Yeah.
But this doesn't make sense. Like that is using your voice, your perspective. And I think what I would love for us as women to be able to do, I think most of us are using our voice. I think to some extent, I think we are, but I would like us to do it with more intention.
That's what I'm thinking with even a few podcasts behind this is I think that there's such a very crippling fear that the enemy kind of dangles over us and we don't even know it. We think it's just us or our insecurity or our over security where we don't move into. I wonder, my guess would be we really don't trust and don't know how to use and are just too pickin' afraid to use our voice intentionally. I think it does happen because God's so faithful to us where there is an interaction or many or multiple or frequent or infrequent interactions where God uses us because he's just that good to us and to the body and to his own glory. But man, what if women, Melissa, began to trust their own voice and began to pray and be like, if you give me an opportunity, Lord, I'm going to take it. So here's my question for you, Melissa. If you had to talk to 25-year-old Melissa who was starting to use that voice, and you can't say as an answer, I wouldn't tell her anything, so she can just start with a journey, blah, blah, blah.
I would never say that.
What would you say to her?
I always have something to say.
Like, what would you say to, and what I'm getting at is those who are newer or emerging on the journey or feel like, even if you've been at this for 15 or 25 or 35 years, you're watching me, Melissa, go through a season of literally learning to use my voice differently. So I don't feel like this is only applicable to those who are just have barely taken a couple steps. It's wherever we are. What would you say?
Okay, I'm not great on the spot. But my first hunch would be, I would say two things that sound like they're opposite. One would be deeply reflect on what is your voice, your unique voice. Do a lot of internal work with God to understand what is your perspective. How do you see the world? How do you see God? What does that look like?
Not
and that's
aspirational.
No. As a just truth for the sake of the truth.
And often, or at least for me, it's not what I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What do you mean? No, I don't know what you mean.
I used to say I was really good at X or Y or Z. And then you get a little bit into it and you're like, actually, I'm really not. I'm better at this. You know what I mean?
See. Self-reflection
I used to say,
can...
I'm a wonderful encourager because I'm happy, because I am positive. It's not that.
So you're talking about self-deception or blind spots. And when we start reflecting,
Yes.
we may see that what we think we are or what the internal landscape is may not be
Right.
what is true. But it's to seek out what, Melissa, is true about your insides. And I just mean in a literal truth sort of way. What is true internally. And then I would say, so that takes quietness. It takes internal work, solitary. And then on the opposite end of that, exercise your voice more. Take more risks to open your mouth and speak. I was even then, still very, very quiet. Afraid of messing up, afraid of doing the wrong thing. And I think I would tell myself to just say that out loud and to say, but here's how I see it. And then in a conversation of using my voice, because then there's a whole thing of like what happens when your voice gets shut down, is to, if I felt like my voice was getting shut down, which it would have been in those days, I would just completely clam up. Instead, I would tell myself to practice being present there and to come back and ask a question then to that other person. That doesn't mean that I'm right and they're wrong or vice versa, but to learn how to dialogue back and forth until there's some mutual understanding. That's a part of using your voice, staying in it.
Yeah.
Like not just almost like what is an animal that quickly like a crab or something where
Snap
it's like,
turtle or
it like quickly goes back into its shell. That's what I would do in the early days. I would encourage myself to hang in a little bit longer.
awesome stuff. Like, really, this is where we're at. And it seems to me that to stay in my shell is to, at least for momentary, to kiss. I think of Andy leaving for work, and usually it's just a quick kiss. You know what I mean? It's almost like to kiss calling goodbye for a little bit when I choose to stay in my shell, which is exactly the opposite that we all want. We want to know and experience God, which absolutely means figuring out our voice, identifying that, and submitting it to God, and just taking this step, even when it gets ugly and messy and lame. So we'll be talking about all this stuff.
Wait, can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
It's usually you.
I know, I'm so happy.
Is that I read this maybe last night. So for those that are on YouTube, I have a really small Patreon community that I really love. And Tammy, a friend, she is going back through like all the old posts and answering them. So she was answering one about voice, and she ended her comment with something like, "Isn't it amazing that we have a God who stoops low to listen to our voice?" And so we've done a lot of talking here about our voice going out to other humans. I don't want us to forget that we have a God who stoops to listen to this voice, this human voice.
And the fact, for me, the more that my voice to God strengthened was a direct correlation to my voice, I think, being used by God and other people.
Yeah.
So much more to talk about. Okay, guys, thank you for joining us. Like, we wish that you were right across the table hanging out.
If you liked this conversation with Andy, you might like this really awkward conversation with Andy. It was about boundaries with male friends. You can check that out by clicking the video above.